Uh, I am, again, Naomi Edelson. I'm a wildlife biologist. I work for the National Wildlife Federation. We are one of the oldest and largest wildlife organizations in the country. We just had an all-staff meeting a minute ago, and somebody who's worked here for more than 40 years is retiring. It's unbelievable to hear her stories and her legacy. But it was quite, she just kind of covered the history of the conservation movement by talking about the last 40 years. It was very, very touching. And so I am going to share with you about a 30 up to a 30-minute PowerPoint, and I'm going to go through some of it quickly, but I am going to show you some beautiful images of the faith community really caring for creation. And it's really, you're the best possible audience because you already care about that. So I'm going to explain to you what we do with congregations and how they're responding to it and all the difference that they're making, and it's very exciting and very rewarding. I will say the one thing is that this program that I'm going to share with you is not in every part of the country, okay? So it just so you understand that we do it in several regions. I work in the Washington, D.C. area, and we have a big program in the Metro Washington area. We also have it in some other parts of the Mid-Atlantic in Pennsylvania, Delaware, and other parts of like Baltimore and Maryland. And we have a program in the Great Lakes. We have emerging programs in other parts of the country. So hopefully you'll get very excited and want to partner with us to do this kind of thing, but we aren't quite ready to do it everywhere, although we have the ability to do it online for any congregation that wants to do it on their own. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And thank you for recording it for those who might miss it. So the program is called as Sacred Grounds, and it is about caring for creation by planting native plants to help people and wildlife. Hold on, it's always that first one that's hard to make happen. The National Wildlife Federation, as I said, has been around for a long time. And actually, we started a program called Garden for Wildlife to inspire people to plant native plants back in the 1970s. And it was focused on where people live, work, play, and learn. And then my rabbi suggested worship. And we were like, whoa, of course. How could we have missed that amazing idea? And that was the beginning of Sacred Grounds about 10 years ago. But as I said, National Wildlife Federation, we have many different ways to reach people, and we have all kinds of programs where we work with whole cities, we work with mayors, we work with homes, and we have really been able to affect millions of acres of land of people who, uh, through private owned lands, not the public government, which we do a lot of advocacy around, but these are in private lands in the country. Now, Sacred Grounds is similar to our existing long-time certified wildlife habitat, where you have to do several things on your property to help wildlife, and including providing food, water, places to raise young, and cover. But Sacred Grounds goes deeper than that by working with congregations. But here's a picture, just as I said, to reemphasize, it really is this core principle that by planting native plants, we can together make a difference. And here's a picture of my son when he was around 5 at my synagogue next to some native plants at our congregation. But as you all already know, all the faiths, every kind of faith has a connection with nature and with this concept of caring for creation. They may not all call it that. And certainly, the late Pope Francis, who named himself after Pope France, Saint Francis, who is one of the famous Catholic names in caring for creation. And here's a church we worked with who had a beautiful mosaic of St. Francis with the birds and the plants. But this is true of all faiths. And but so our goals are definitely to create wildlife habitat, but it's also to beautify the grounds, but in a sustainable way, and to prepare and cope with climate change, whether it's too much water or too little water. Those are both big impacts to with climate change. It's about making sure we clean our waters. I'll talk a little more about that. And really, it's a simple idea of putting your faith into practice. It gives people an action they can take, which we're finding people are really responding to. And it should save congregations money through lower cost landscaping. In our region, and again, the Washington, D.C. area, we've had a lot of issues with what's called stormwater runoff, which is all the water that goes through our parking lots and on our streets and off our lawns. And our taxpayer money has been used to help restore these creeks. And they've had a huge investment in that because of the damage, and they've really responded. This is a picture of a creek right like minutes from my house, and it's incredibly beautiful. But they've put in lots of dollars to do that. And it returned in big spades because now we have a large number of species when we only were down to three different kinds of fish. And people are on this trail every day, really 100 people or more. It's very active, popular. And in our region, again, we are really struggling with this increased precipitation and also prolonged drought. It's these cycles of too much and then too little. But in particular, we're slated for just more water. And the intensity and frequency is what is causing some of the problems. And so the question really was with the local governments putting in money and trying to help restore our creeks and manage their lands in a certain way, what do we, and then we try to get, they're trying to get people to do that, but how do we actually really reach critical mass on the ground? And how do we really get to have that huge impact with a lot of people helping address the climate change and stormwater runoff? And that's where this idea of working with congregations really allows us to get to scale. And congregations serve as both ambassadors to reach a lot of other people, as well as helping solve the problem on their own properties. Because congregations are actually part of the problem and part of the solution. And most of them, depending on where you are, have parking lots, right? All these people come at least one day a week, and they need a lot of parking space. And they have large roofs, and they often have big lawns. Now we know some of them are pocket size in urban area, in densely urban areas who can't do that, but they still, even in those sites, usually have more than a home or an apartment would. And here's a picture just from a very recent rain that we had at this church. And it's affecting these congregations. There's a church we're working with in Southeast DC where the water was coming off their parking lot in all the neighborhoods and running down past this major big oak, beautiful oak tree and causing a lot of erosion and flooding their sanctuary. And so they were like, we have to solve this problem. And lawns are, people think again of all the stormwater runoff on pavement, but lawns, like maybe many of you know, are also actually like concrete, where they have shallow roots and they don't hold water or pollutants and they lead to more runoff. And that native plants are very important because most of them are adapted to their region, and most of them, not all, have more extensive root system and deeper roots, which slow the flow of the water. They hold the water, and that's also why in arid situations they
Yeah,
can manage
I'm
with
watching
less
the video. Wait
little
a minute.
water.
It's a webinar. I just need to get out of it. Okay, I think I'm good.
And so the root system of these native plants is critical. And you can see compared to the turf grass, which is what most people have on their lawns and we've been taught to have, it's
I
very
can't get
minimal.
out of it.
Maybe you
I think
can,
it's,
I don't know if somebody can mute that. Thank you. All right. So
oh, okay.
we,
Can I call you
use
back?
use native plants in this region to slow the flow, reducing flooding and pollution. We do have a lot of issues of flooding, not like you just had in Kentucky, but and it is again, and people talk about their own homes being flooded, and so we reach people through that. But native plants are also very important to restore wildlife habitat. And again, like we have the many, many species that are already endangered through our Federal Endangered Species Act and state laws, but there are about 12,000 species at least in the pipeline that are heading towards, that are declining and are heading and are at risk of being threatened or endangered. And one of them is the monarch butterfly, which, it's a very sad story where we've lost about 90% of them since 1980. And these lawns are actually like concrete for wildlife too, with no food for pollinators, birds, or others, and they're like a food desert. They're a food desert for wildlife. And Dr. Doug Tallamy has pioneered this, like I said, National Wildlife Federation for a long time has had this program for gardening for wildlife. But Dr. Doug Tallamy is an insect biologist, an entomologist who's become this amazing ambassador in the gardening community, giving talks everywhere. And he has helped really help people understand that we can bring nature home and it's our responsibility to do that. And he said we must change what we expect our gardens to do in our yards. And we expect them to be life-giving, not life-taking. And the big thing that I learned from him, even though I'm a wildlife biologist, is that I did not realize is that insects, in particular caterpillars, are absolutely crucial for birds. And people think of bird feeders in the winter, but that's not when they need it. These caterpillars are very important as protein sources for growing birds. And an example is a chickadee, which needs up to 9,000 caterpillars in a 3-week period to raise its young. That's phenomenal amount of protein. And if they don't have it, those babies don't make it. And there's all kinds of data now to show that native plants are critical to those caterpillars, that they rely on the native plants. They've co-evolved. They do not live, for the most part, on non-natives. And here's an example of a white oak tree compared to like Bradford pear, which is commonly planted. And he has actually done more work to show that really there's certain particular plants of these that are called keystone plants that are even more important because they really provide even most of the host plants for caterpillars. And he has all kinds of data, which you can see, and it's tied up in that native plant finder that was linked. Goldenrod and aster, two very important ones. So we share with the congregations this idea that native plants are better. And that idea that even if we all do a little bit, it can add up to make a big difference. We work one-on-one with a lot of congregations when we have grant funds, and we have set up these multi-faith cohorts with churches, synagogues, mosques, a Sikh temple, Buddhist temple, Gurdwara, and others. And so in our region, we have been working with hundreds of congregations actually in a variety of different ways. And we are funded primarily, these are some of our funders. We're primarily funded through the lens of addressing the stormwater runoff, which has been interesting. Here are some of our partners. We partner with a couple of faith groups, Interfaith Power and Light, which of course is nationwide, and Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake, which is around the Chesapeake Bay, as well as some other local environmental groups. And it did start with my congregation. We were one of the pilots, Adat Shalom Reconstruction a Synagogue. Here's my rabbi at our planting day. We had a stormwater basin to handle these floods, the rain that comes in, the 100-year flood that's now much more common than 100 years. And we replanted it with native plants. We had a huge family planting day. It was really fun. People still talk about it. It's a real community building program. which wasn't our original intention, but we're glad that that's one of the results. And the gardens look beautiful. It in our region, because of those stormwater runoff problem and the lawn contribution to it, our local governments are actually prioritizing congregations and giving them up to $20,000 to remove their lawns and put in what they call conservation landscaping or rain gardens. It's been a very significant thing, and that's really helped help congregations do this. So one of the cohorts we worked with fairly recently was a synagogue, a historical black church, and a mosque, all within a mile of each other. It's very, very nice. And they already knew each other a little bit, and that's how we got connected with them. And we really talk with them about, how in the past, we really get them to help understand that in the past, they thought of lawns based on what they were taught, like really to make them look pretty. And looking pretty looked like in Europe mostly. And, that idea of these lawns. I mean, you think of these beautiful Italian gardens, which are beautiful. I mean, all these gardens are beautiful, but they aren't good for helping people and wildlife. And so we are working very specifically to change the behavior of how people manage their lawns, their yards, and then think of all these other things. And we often call it planting with a purpose, which people love. And that really fits into this idea of putting your faith into action. And we base it on community-based social marketing, which is a behavior change strategy. It's based on all this science. We have a environmental psychologist working with us, and we have all kinds of specific ways. We have a program which is very much tied to this process. And one of the things we do is we do share information. For sure, people need that, but we have inspirational why plant native plant presentations to really inspire and get people's emotional connection to it and have them excited, not just be like, you're doing the wrong thing, but like you could do the right thing and get people to really want to do this. And here's a mosque we worked with. It was crazy to me. I didn't everyone's different. This was during the pandemic, but it was a Saturday night at 9 p.m. And they were like, this is when we want to do it. I was like, no one's going to come. 60 people came. It was great. I couldn't believe it. But, they know their congregation. We're still working with them. We just saw them this weekend. And so we talk about what are the problems, why these are some of the things I'm sharing with you, and how you can help. And we talk about all, we share with them relevant information. People are really used to understand that there's a lot of flooding here. We talk about the problems with wildlife. And we then, though, this is a congregational setting, we really talk about social influence and how doing things as a community, we see what a difference it makes peer to peer. So while I come in and share with them how great this is, what they hear is that their own member is telling them how great it is, which is very different because I'm a, so-called expert, which I'm really not on everything, but they think of me that way. But really, when they hear from their friend that they've known and prayed with or participated with for 10 years and really and said they say this is a good thing to do, that makes that so much more powerful. And so we know the leveraging social influence really works. And we talk a lot about loving your neighbors and how a stream is your neighbor, or it's, we live in its neighborhood. And here's my Congressman Jamie Raskin, who I like to talk about because he has a picture of Sligo Creek in his congressional office, and he cares and knows he lives in the stream's neighborhood. And we show people the gardens, we take them on garden walks, and we tap into the feelings and emotions, have them experience it. We take them on boat trips, and we have them make a commitment where they pledge to plant native plants. And they share their own faith's connection to caring for creation, so that they also hear about their own leaders doing it. And we talk, of course, we encourage all the family-friendly events and that people are pledged for the next generation. We created a page where people will go to each congregation. Whoops, It doesn't show it. Each congregation there's a drop down menu, and every congregation will have their own specific section of it, and people will pledge towards their congregation to show they're doing something with their congregation. And then those who pledge to plant native plants can come back to their congregation and pick up a native plant, free native plants. And one of the churches had this idea. They wanted to give it away on Mother's Day, caring for Mother Earth. It was a great idea. They already gave away plants on Mother's Day, but they were like, let's give away a native plant. So now that's a key part of our program, and we've called it Planting Hope. And people really have responded to this. And here's a pastor who put it up on his kiosk, free plant giveaway. We give away little baby plants to make it very easy for people to plant. It's not hard for them, and the people show up. Let me tell you, people show up. They want these plants. And they love doing it. They get to interact with their own congregation members. People it's very, very sweet. So in this case, some of the youth said, look, we'll be here. You can hire us to come do your yard work, but in a sustainable way. So it was great. And rain or shine, people come and we give away information so people know what the plants are, how to plant them, and where to get more, which we learned through our focus groups. Some of the congregations go to town, they create events, they tie it to other events. I was at a synagogue this weekend that had a big barbecue for some other reason, and they had their native plant giveaway tied to that so they could take advantage of an existing event. They set up displays. The clergy come out and enjoy it. They see their community happy getting plants. It's really nice. And then we work with a congregation to put in gardens. And that's been a highlight for a lot of the congregations. Beautiful, this garden, I didn't put the picture in, I meant to do that. But this is when they started a few years ago. You should see what it looks like now. I just was there again this weekend, and it was like, it looks totally different. I have to remember to put that picture in. I couldn't believe it. And it is a demonstration garden, but it also does address the problems of stormwater runoff and no food for wildlife. So we give them a couple of signs to explain what it is. And we do have issues with maintaining the gardens. People want to come plant them, but they don't always want to come and keep them up. So we have been starting to work more with some landscaping firms to help train people to how to maintain them. And then I'm going to just show you some of the results. So we do surveys every year. We're just sending out our 2025 survey to I don't remember, the thousands of people. And we found out that in general, the last 2 years, people say the plants that they collected are growing. And that, can you see this? this is the big thing, 94% are saying they want to plant more plants, native plants, which is like a home run. And even more, not the full number, but 71% want to replace their lawn with native plants, which is like definitely even more of a home run because that's a really high number. And we've started helping them do that. And it's just was really, really striking to see these numbers. And then they show that they love doing this with their congregation. So we love that. Uh, we've given away, the numbers are going to be more than this, more like 10 or 15,000 to how many homes in the Washington, D.C. area. We just did like 25 congregations in the last month. It's been busy. And a couple of the last things are we did do surveys to show the response to insects. So here's a lawn which had like 11 species of insects using it. And you compare that with the native plant gardens after their second year, and they had 75 species and many different numbers. And so this is a great indicator of those insect response to these gardens. And one of the gardens, they saw monarch caterpillars on their milkweed, and they also have dealt with the flooding issues. This one church had an asphalt playground you can see on the left. and they put in all these native plants, and that was flowing right into a very polluted but busy creek, the one I showed you before, Sligo Creek. It was just uphill, and so they've helped reduce the runoff into that. This church that I showed you in the beginning with that big tree and the embankment that was very eroded, they, with the help of the Washington, D.C. government, they put in not only the garden you can see here, but another garden and 15 free trees and a cistern. They gave them all kinds of resources and they stopped the flooding into their sanctuary. So, in this garden, also the same thing. The water was running off their parking lot and going into the neighbor's yard who was always complaining that that stopped with these native plant gardens. So we're very pleased to see those kinds of results. We are testing a couple of new programs where we're giving away larger garden kits of 20 plants. We're looking at this idea of tree of life of planting understory gardens, which will really help with a compacted lawn under trees in urban suburban areas. And our latest new one we're calling Growing Joy. And so it was great when you said what brings you joy in the beginning. We found the program so joyful, and we are starting where we're opening it up to many, many congregations at once to do some training. And we're piloting how we can do this virtually with some training of green team leaders without having to be on site to help them as intensively as we are. But it will still include them getting free plants to give away and congregation garden planning help to get some of those financial resources. So we're going to be hosting some webinars soon and recruiting congregations to join us. And I'll stop there. Thank you for listening. And I'm happy to take questions if you want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just invite anybody who is interested in asking a question to do the your raise your hand function, or